So now I'm very excited to welcome our guest speaker, Laurence Sutton, who will discuss through his own experience and expertise how to maximise tech utilisation in your firm, a challenge we know a lot of firms can face. So over to you, Laurence.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Just to introduce myself, I'm practice manager with Brevitts Solicitors, a small family-run firm started by my wife's father in the early 60s and now run by my wife, Jane, and our daughter, Jessica, who's just recently qualified as a associate solicitor. I've been a partner with the firm for the last 10 years. It's an LLP. It's only in the last year or so that I've played a fully active part, having retired from a senior management position in the Crown Prosecution Service after 39 years, latterly as a regional business manager for the Midlands region, and also their online CPSD, which interestingly I used to as a case study. Sadly for me, in my late 50s, I decided to do a master's, and I did that master's in virtual team working, and as a result of my time at CPSD, introduced smarter working into the organisation, which left them in a very strong position, thankfully, not only just me, but many others, for when we went into the pandemic. I'm a fellow of the Institute of Legal Executives and a qualified executive and leadership coach, having coached senior leaders and the leadership teams across government departments, including the NHS. Excuse me. I also have a real keen interest in keeping up to date, and I'm an appointed member of by the Department of Education for the new T-levels, and I also write curriculum, or help to write curriculum for SILEX. So I'd like to thank Craig for inviting me to speak today. He's not said, but I think it's because our journey at Brevitts in introducing Offspray may be of some interest to you. When it was first introduced at Brevitts, I don't think my wife will mind me saying, although she is working from her home office today, so I may be overheard, but it wasn't a great success initially. Expectation and enthusiasm was very high. Jane originally purchased Offspray, the Osprey Approach, because she needed to replace her accounting system, but did so in terms of the cost and also the potential that Offspray presented to a small practice. So it was very forward thinking about of her. So having said the enthusiasm was high, the implementation, I understand, was poor. When I thought I'd retired, I was presented with a list of tasks by my wife, as I think most men that don't take up golf are. Well, I think a task list, Jane called it. They were in fact a number of implementation projects and new policies and procedures that were required, of which Offspray was at the top of the list, followed by a dash saying, "Sort it," in capital letters. So today I'm going to talk you through how I approach the challenge of sorting it. I'll be talking from a non-technical perspective, but in terms of the leadership engagement and the commitment that I brought to the piece to ensure that we could sort it. My wife, as I said, was very enthusiastic about automating case management for all the reasons that you've probably looked into this. She believed in the product that was Offspray, and she wanted it sorted quickly. She saw it was going to be our future, and it was going to help small practices like ourselves survive amongst the challenges of recent times. I soon established that there was not a problem with Offspray, and as you might guess, it was a problem with the staff. But I approached this from the staff not being the problem, but the staff being the solution. The takeaway for today, I would hope, from my brief conversation with you, is getting clarity and understanding of what you want to achieve with Offspray, realizing that you will only get out of it what you put into it. The more you put into it, the more benefits you will realize. And that's been our experience in our 5-year journey. I didn't fully appreciate the destination. I knew it was an exploration and roughly the right direction in which we were travelling. I was not an end user, and I was very much dependent upon the staff to make this work. We took it steady, we took time initially, but then as a result of taking it steady in the early stages, things have escalated and we've implemented things incrementally, which has been a key to our success, taking staff along with us. So getting them restarted really was the first and foremost issue. And if I say we're at this moment considering, well, we're just about to launch our website and the interactive portals and to add on the workflows for compliance, which Jane is very much looking forward to, for the first time filling out our application for indemnity insurance next year based on all of the measures that we hope to have available using the tools that have been previously explained. So getting them restarted, we needed to be planned and organised. They've been very reactive up until this point. We agreed that we were going to be proactive and intentional about what we wanted to achieve and to take forward. And I think Jane, above all, realised that this was going to cost in terms of staff time, resources, and their energy. And this in itself helped to change mindsets by the involvement that we went through. Time and resources were, as I say, identified to allow time and opportunities to tee up and realise the benefits of automation. I worked with the fee earners initially to determine what they wanted to achieve and, more importantly, where their starting point was. What they had achieved and where they had challenges. I used a great little simple inquiry model that I often use in my one-to-one coaching with executives. And whilst you might think it's simple and straightforward, it goes down very well with senior executives that I've worked with on a one-to-one and senior management teams that I've worked with in groups. First stage of this very simple model, I got them to describe to me what their perfect 10 was and what it looked like, what it felt like, what it would feel like to them. I wrote down what they wanted, and it was quite exciting what they wanted, but I thought I needed to introduce an element of realism. But they gave it to me, what they wanted in a perfect world. Just bullet points will do if you're undertaking this process with your staff over an implementation. They were pleased with themselves. I could tell they'd got it all off their chest and spelt out to me what it is that they wanted. And also they realised just how much they'd achieved and celebrated those achievements, albeit small. The next stage, using a scale of 1 to 10, I asked them to put a number against where they thought they were at now. They initially struggled with this, but it was important, so I persevered. They were very honest and gave it to me as a 5. I got them to say why they thought they were a 5, which again illuminated some of the challenges that they faced and some of the successes that they'd had. They were able to explain why they weren't a 4 and why they weren't yet a 6, which was really interesting for me because it enabled me to establish their position. This honesty and accuracy of the starting point proved to be vital because it enabled me to share their current position and understand their current position and share that with the Osprey Approach and the team at Offspray. Next, what we did was when we got down to what we needed to get from their starting point to where they wanted to be, the jump from 5 to 10 was obviously too big. And we then determined that there were key essentials of what realistically would give us enough to get us to where we wanted to be. We settled for an initial 6 by the end of the first phase and 7 by the end of the next phase, with a steady action plan thereafter to get us to 8. And I'm very grateful to say that we are in the phases, in the throes of moving to 8, which I'm absolutely delighted about, and they are. And their sense of enthusiasm and energy has shifted completely during that transitional period. So once they determined the steps and actions needed, we were able to determine who and when, and we had a similar sessions with the staff to ensure we could secure their buy-in and take them with us. it was really interesting to have some conversations. We have a mix of young and more mature within the practice. Some of the practice paralegals have worked with the company since they left school, have left and come back having had children, and are now in their golden years. They are technically, in terms of the law, really proficient, but somewhat reluctant and resistant to change where IT is involved. Having said that, my wife has taken them through the initial confiscation of electric typewriters, not quite manual typewriters, and then eventually binning those typewriters to ensure that they couldn't bring them out at the first sign of a word processor going wrong. So as I say, once we determined the steps and actions, we needed to work with the staff. We needed to ensure that buy-in from them. I won't say it was easy, but I believe it was well worth it. Engaging with the staff is the best way of getting them to secure what you need and making them feel it's what they need in terms of the savings and the benefits that can come from this approach. This got us an outline plan. And we were able to share what we wanted to achieve by then with the team, as I said, at practice, and they provided a great deal of, I'd have to say, patience, polite patience and support for and with us. A word to the wise, you might want to break the process down that I've just explained to you and to make the transition of that process from where you start to where you would like to be into manageable stages. Don't get overwhelmed at any time. Some of this can be quite complex to start with, and then very simple in terms of as you embed it. For the team or champion responsible for bringing in these implementations, I would say, first crucial step, engage with your managers, with your staff, explain the benefits to them and the practice. For us, these included automation, the links to compliance, saving time and energy, taking away repetitive nature of some of the work, speed, efficiency. The quality of their output was very much paramount. Selling the fact that they can change workflows and templates to meet their specific requirements, because only theirs is theirs is the only way, was really helpful to make sure they weren't going to lose some of those comfort blankets, and some of those comfort blankets could be incorporated into the basic product. They've seen some of these benefits, less paper, postages, fewer phone calls and visitors to the office. I have to say, one of the things that we went into the pandemic with our own risk assessment and risk approach of people working from home, and most of our people worked from home throughout the pandemic, was that this case management system was seen as our absolute saviour, and all of any reluctance or resilience to going with it was lost, and we have moved along so much more by the motivation of seeing some of these things because they had no alternative but to go with some of these rather than have them as options. So they've seen better interactions with clients, better case management progress, more compliments and less complaints, particularly over a very difficult period. It was quite a novel thing for me, coming from the service that I did, introducing a compliments register where we celebrate once a month with some of the things and the feedback that we get from our clients. But the important thing is about sharing with them where you think you would like to be against where you are now, and explaining some of your rationale and establishing from them their initial views. Do they recognise and agree where you're at now? Do they like the sound of where you want to be? And what are their concerns? What are their ideas? Do they have the same concerns as you? And do they have the same appetite for automation? Because there may well be some individual one-to-one work that you need to do there that sits behind the actual work, nurturing people to provide that understanding and that energy and awareness often I used in some of the one-to-ones that I had with some of the more mature, was building relationships up with newer staff that they were seeking to mentor and develop in terms of the law, and having this technical exchange, or almost like a virtual help desk, to an exchange to help them with the technical issues. And so we got this sort of osmosis of technical IT skills moving over into the practice paralegals, and the practice paralegals becoming more IT savvy, and some of the IT savvy junior apprenticeship paralegal becoming more informed and knowledgeable about the legal content. So teasing out the appetite and the concerns for automation, what they see as the challenges, what their ideas and suggestions are for taking forward. There were some very helpful suggestions that came forward that I acted as the interface with the senior management team, i.e. the fee earners, in relation to some of those ideas. And even when we weren't quite certain about them, we adopted the approaches and developed the approaches so that they could identify with things that where they had actually contributed to all of this. I also sort of engaged with them as to what part they would like to play in terms of the implementation. And we had some one person that was very, very strong in terms of wanting to trial and pilot. And she soon became our champion and coordinator and lead on this in terms of the end user. And I'm sure her name is well known to the technical support that's provided by Offspray, but she proved invaluable. And that's been obviously recognised in terms of her ownership and sort of command of the overall approach within the practice. We did use her for proof of concept on one particular area of our work, and then started to get the benefits from that whilst helping to roll out to others, ironing out points for one department and building practice-wise expertise internally. And that important collaboration of relationship with the key stakeholder that was Offspray, making the staff part of this from the start, seeing them as the solution and not really the problem, letting them see it's for them to do and not to have done to them, I think was a very honest and much appreciated approach with the staff from the feedback that I've received. Getting the staff on board and doing this is the biggest investment, and you will gain and see the best return on that investment. But it does have a price. Time does need to be allocated. You know, the what and the who and how long it takes is really imperative. Initially, some of the technical work that's involved with shaping this and making it your own, because you know, you're buying an environment in which you can make your own, is really important. But the benefits for them and others comes back. You know, I get feedback that I don't understand, like, it's great working with the fields, putting it all in, being proactive at the start, getting out and pressing things and automating things quite quickly without having to retype, is all great. Securing a real common purpose of what's in it for them as well as the practice. This isn't all about saving staff. There's always a bit of that in the firm. Can I say that we've saved staff? Well, probably no, we haven't. There's been a resource implication to upfront this, but I'm very confident that as staff leave and the new, more technical staff are let loose and are up to speed, we won't need to replace everybody that leaves in due course. So to understand what needs to be achieved and how to achieve it, I think was a practical practical lesson for me. They knew more than I did, and your people are going to know more than you did, and driving this change forward needs to come from the staff, from the centre, from the people, and that understanding of people and their awareness and building their awareness and nurturing their development, I think is important around what they know in terms of bringing about this operational change. Champions and implementation teams from the shop floor are going to make this happen, supported by experts and specialists of Offspray. I knew that from the automation and the digitalisation program that we had at CPS. It wasn't the managers that were keeping count and holding to account. It was the people that were actually doing it and being given the time to introduce the changes that are necessary. It was also important for us, albeit small, because people get so busy, to secure excellent internal communications, to create that external communication with Offspray, to get the fully benefits of that collaborative relationship. This creates momentum and buy-in from everyone. And this is about self-management, really, and becoming more aware. You need to plan the phases of your journey and the steps and the timeline that you take. Take your time to start with. Things will speed up as you go along. It gets quite exciting when they're waiting for the next thing to layer in and save time. It's not a race to the finishing line. It's a bit of a cliche, but it's a continuous development and improvement journey with great operational delivery benefits, in my view. You don't need Prince 2 to have a project management approach. Just using the principles of delegating with confidence to people that are confident in what they need to know, holding them to account, really, and celebrating their successes as you go through. Keeping track, encouraging pace, holds people to account in the right way, catching people in rather than out, and otherwise casework will just take a priority. So giving some quality time, not just one person responsible for it as all of their time, but a number of people that are responsible for it for part of their time, I think is the right sort of balance that's required here. So I wish you every success in your journey, whatever point you're at. Don't rely on just what you're buying. It's a brilliant platform, which in my experience will grow ahead of us. And I'm excited to hear the developments that have been this morning. And I hope there's someone from our practice listening to some of the ideas that have been shared. They're growing ahead of us and providing solutions to problems we don't even know at the moment that we've got, which I think is quite exciting and quite reassuring to have as a small practice. I will hang around at the end to try and answer any questions that you may have. But if anyone would like to contact me directly, I'm more than happy to have a conversation, come and see you, have a one-to-one, or even talk to your implementation team or management team about my experiences, and to share some perhaps handy hints and top tips that I found that have been really beneficial. So thanks again for listening, and thank you for the opportunity to be able to share our experience.
What advice would you give to a firm who has a mix of tech lovers and tech haters? So the approach you'd use to make sure the utilization is firm-wide.
My experience, past and present, has been that you will get that, and I think I alluded to it in the conversation I had earlier. And it was like creating mentors with people with great technical ability to share that with the staff that don't have the technical ability, and a reciprocal mentoring, reverse mentoring in terms of assisting them with their development in terms of the casework itself. You know, a lot of the newer staff come in with great technical skills in terms of IT, but they're not as knowledgeable and skilled and experienced as our current paralegals, some of whom struggle with the IT. There needs to be a bit of an arrangement in relation to that, so it doesn't become, you know, always going to the same person for the same thing. So making sure that's part and parcel of their training evaluation, and also part, you know, that they actually need to help with consolidation once they've been to training, and that is a short-lived relationship rather than something that goes on and on indefinitely. And I find that that's the way that it avoids frustration on both sides, and it's almost like a bit of an equality. And so buddying, basically, in development terms, buddying people together appropriately and getting them to coach and support one another.
How do you balance the day-to-day work with dedicating the right time? Do you have any advice for that?
I think when we've initially dedicated time for certain members of staff that we were very much dependent upon preparing the products that we needed or securing the templates and the fields within, whilst we were assisted greatly by Offspray staff, there still is a requirement and an investment. Often that investment and resource would be watered down by the business. One of the things that we found really helpful was to give some quality time out away from the office or in a section of the office where they wouldn't be disturbed, and it paid dividends in terms of getting us to where we needed to be. Holding those people to account as well, delegating to them with confidence and authority was another thing that we structured in to ensure that we got to where we needed to be and not too letter shy, so we could actually implement and roll out as and when. So yes, it's going to be an eternal problem, but well worth the investment of implementing. But implementing, if it's a larger practice, in the many. So little bits from a lot of people will make it work effectively, and not having one person that's totally responsible for anything other than the coordination, I think is the key.